all these developmental projects. To one side, of course, they are developmental, but to the other side, they are causing lots of problems for the people of this state because you see that ours is a fragile ecology, and within this, we find that because of these developmental projects, we are facing a lot of problems. So this talk is about pious to persecuted, because when we look at these rivers, we find that we used to worship, or even today we worship all these rivers, but they have been persecuted, and this persecution is by us only. Nobody else is coming to this planet, to our place, but it is our greed, it is that anthropocentrism where man is at the center, our greed is at the center, and that's why we are facing. And it's not for one or the other, it's for everybody. And again, nowadays we see that how the environment is changing. If we think about environment, or if we think about, say, global warming as a concept, sometimes back we used to say that this is hypothetical in nature, but now we are finding it in place, and lots of problems are there in environment. So I'll read out my paper, some portions of it, and I hope you must have got the gist of my talk, and you'll get, because sometimes say certain terms are there which are literary in nature. Some of you might find them difficult, so that's why I have given you this gist of my talk. Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the Sanskrit phrase contained in Maha-Upanishad, speaks of viewing the world as one family. This world encompasses all living and non-living entities of the world, humans, non-humans, and nature. Rivers are an indivisible part of nature, and the very possibility of life comes from rivers. Extolled in all cultures, old and new, rivers are a primordial life-giving force of nature and have nurtured us like a mother since the beginning of civilization and continue to do so. Just like a mother, the river has a pleasant, that is Saumya form, and an unpleasant, that is Ugra form. Nurturing in their Saumya form, in their Ugra form, they can cause widespread death and destruction. Rivers are deified in the Hindu mythology and immortalized in numerous folk songs. Himachal Pradesh is a land which births major rivers like Beas, which is its Vedic name is Vipasha, Satluj, Shatudri, Ravi, that is Iravati, Chenab, that is Asikni, and Yamuna, that is Kalindi, etc., along with innumerable pristine rivulets. Various aspects of rivers are penned down in the short stories, novels, and poems, and sung of in the folk songs of hill state. The geography of Himachal Pradesh is indivisible with its river, and so is its life. With the advent of anthropocentric mindset in the state, the importance of the rivers has been relegated to an all-time low. Despite the deification of rivers, they are being abused beyond recognition. Though considered as pious in theory, our rivers are being persecuted in practice to make way for the insatiable human greed. Construction of various hydroelectric projects in the state, diversion of rivers' course to make way for development, encroachment, construction, and illegal mining in the riverbed, polluting the rivers. These are a few examples of what rivers have come to be in the contemporary times. It is ironical that we deify our rivers in India and still abuse them beyond recognition, while in the West, rivers are treated just like rivers, and they are a lot cleaner than ours. The ecocide that our rivers are facing at the hands of this commercial mindset is happening at an alarming rate, and the very reason of our Earth being called a blue planet is on the verge of being altered to a point of no return. This paper attempts to shed light on the journey of the rivers of Himachal Pradesh from being pious to being persecuted. Piousness and persecution are theological perspectives, and the focus of this research will be to bring forth the contemporary connotation of the two terms with respect to the lost rivers of hill state. Rivers have held a sacred position in the cultural and religious ethos of Himachal Pradesh for centuries, yet contemporary narratives depict a stark departure from this reverence to portray the rivers as victims of environmental degradation and exploitation. Himachal Pradesh is home to various folk tales and folk songs surrounding various rivulets which are called Ban Ganga, Giri Ganga, Kheer Ganga, etc. Yet these melodious songs have given way to the shrill cacophony of protests against the hydroelectric power conglomerates and the unperturbed authorities. Through the analysis of select literary works and cultural representations, this research aims to elucidate the nostalgia for the lost sanctity of rivers and the underlying socio-cultural and environmental implications. It will also see the river as a living culture as it is represented in select narratives of Himachal Pradesh, and to trace its odyssey from being a site of community and reverence to being a site of conflicts. India is a land of stories and tales that transcend generations, which stem out in myriad manners in different languages, speaking of different contexts. These stories that have been passed from one generation to the next, whether through text or oral tales, include both human and non-human characters. The non-human element, that is the nature comprising of plants and animals, have been personified in our literature since time immemorial. Goddess Ganga is the personification of the river Ganga, and it symbolizes forgiveness and purification. Born as the daughter of Himavat, which is the personification of the Himalayas, who himself is the purest with its white blanket of snow, and from where all rivers ensue. Himachal Pradesh, nestled in the lap of Himalayas, is renowned for its pristine natural beauty and spiritual aura, epitomized in its revered rivers. Considered sacred by the local populace, these rivers have historically been central to the socio-cultural fabric of the region. The reverence for these rivers finds its roots in ancient folklore, religious scriptures, and cultural practices. From the mighty Satluj and Beas to the revered Yamuna and Ganga tributaries, each river holds a significant place in the collective consciousness of the people. Rituals, festivals, and myths surrounding these rivers have reinforced their sanctity and served as a guiding ethos for harmonious coexistence with nature. However, with the advent of modernization and unsustainable developmental practices, these rivers have undergone a transformation from symbols of sanctity to victims of exploitation. Furthermore, it has brought about a paradigm shift in the perception of and treatment of rivers in Himachal. Rapid infrastructural development, hydropower projects, tourism, and unchecked pollution have led to the degradation of river ecosystems and the erosion of their sanctity. This transition from reverence to exploitation has profound socio-cultural and environmental implications, threatening not only the ecological balance but also the cultural heritage of the region. While touted as a solution to energy demands, the unprecedented proliferation of hydroelectric power projects in Himachal have ushered in an era of unprecedented persecution of the rivers, leading to environmental degradation. These entail the construction of dams, reservoirs, and diversion channels, resulting in significant alterations to river ecosystems. The fragmentation of riverine habitats, disruption of natural flow regimes, and sedimentation have led to the loss of biodiversity, degradation of water quality, and exacerbation of downstream flooding. Additionally, the impoundment of water behind dams has raised concerns about reservoir-induced seismicity and the safety of surrounding communities. The technology employed, known as the run-of-the-river dams, diverts water through tunnels burrowed into the mountains, and the excavated material, that is muck, is often disposed of along the riverbeds. During the periods of higher precipitation or cloudbursts, the water returns to the river, carrying the dumped muck along with it. This destructive process is evident in rivers like Parvati, Beas, Ravi and Satluj, as well as in many other small hydropower dams. Moreover, long tunnels spanning 150 kilometers have been planned or commissioned on the Satluj River, causing significant harm to the entire ecosystem. Socio-economically too, this has serious implications for local communities dependent on rivers for their livelihoods. Displacement of indigenous populations, loss of agricultural land and disruption of traditional fishing practices have eroded the socio-cultural fabric of riverine communities. Furthermore, the uneven distribution of benefits and costs associated with hydroelectric development has exacerbated socio-economic disparities and engendered conflicts over resource allocation. Many people at different places like Chamera, Pong Dam and Bhakra Nangal are protesting for their rights since decades, but to no avail. Furthermore, the desecration of rivers through hydroelectric exploitation has engendered a profound sense of cultural dissonance as communities grapple with loss of sacred sites, rituals and traditions. The submerging of hot water springs at Tatapani in Shimla district, where people used to take a holy dip during the Lodi festival, have left people in sway. With this submergence into the cold dam, their culture, aspirations and even life force has been ruined. People could be witnessed during the festival feeling nostalgic about their reverence for the Satluj River and its hot water springs. The commodification of rivers as mere conduits for energy generation stands in stark contrast to their intrinsic value as repositories of cultural heritage and ecological integrity. The memories of the last year's disaster about heavy flash floods in Himachal cannot be obliterated from the minds of its citizens. The death toll of nearly 150 persons and an estimated cost of 10,000 crore of rupees has one more reason which is often overlooked. The persecution of rivers could also be ascribed due to the expansion of road infrastructure, particularly the four-laning of roads. While road development is typically associated with improved connectivity and economic growth, it also involves extensive land clearance, slope cutting and river bank alterations, leading to habitat fragmentation, soil erosion and sedimentation in river ecosystem. Moreover, the construction of four-lane roads often entail land acquisition and involuntary resettlement of local communities residing along river banks and adjacent areas. Displacement disrupts traditional livelihoods, cultural practices and social networks, exacerbating poverty and marginalization among affected communities. Moreover, the loss of access to river resources for fishing, irrigation and drinking water further undermines the socio-economic well-being of river-dependent communities, perpetuating cycles of vulnerability and inequity. Rampant deforestation in the state poses a grave threat to the health and vitality of its rivers. Deforestation disrupts the delicate balance of ecosystem by removing vital vegetation cover, leading to soil erosion, increased sedimentation, and altered hydrological patterns in river basins. Without the stabilizing influence of trees and vegetation, rainfall runoff accelerates, exacerbating erosion and sedimentation in river channels. It reduces the capacity of forests to act as natural sponges, resulting in heightened vulnerability to floods and droughts, further impacting river flow, dynamics and water quality. Contemporary narratives, both literary and cultural, reflect a deep-seated nostalgia for the lost sanctity of rivers in Himachal. Writers, poets, filmmakers and artists have portrayed the rivers as metaphorical victims of human greed and neglect, lamenting the loss of their pristine purity and divine essence. Through their works, they evoke a sense of longing for a bygone era when rivers were revered as lifelines rather than commodified resources. Etymologically derived from the two Greek words nostos and algia, the term nostalgia depicts pain and sufferings of a person feeling homesick. However, contemporary interpretations have extended its meaning from medical studies and clinical psychology to the studies of philosophy, history and literature. But the term has not attained positive meaning with respect to the visions of the 21st century. When people realize the deceptive nature of progress and development in modern time, then they immediately start longing for the past. So the concept of nostalgia becomes an opposite reaction to the idea of progress. That is why writers, philosophers, and thinkers depict a strong disbelief in that prevalent idea of progress. And they appear to be nostalgic, through which they can revive layers of history and tradition. As it is ostensibly been remarked by Mark Crinson that, I quote, "The ruins of the past need to be discarded. They can be put together in newly meaningful ways. It is better to understand our heritage than to try to produce a void without direction." I unquote. Hence, in addition to feelings of pain and suffering, nostalgia provides a vision of coexistence where man can be more sensitive and sensible not only towards living things but also for such non-living things which are there to establish a socio-psychological construct that deserves to be called a real utopia on earth. Here I would like to talk about a tale from ancient Greece, that there was once a king called Midas who did a good deed for a satyr and hence was granted a wish by Dionysus. Midas wished that all he touched turned to gold. Though Dionysus tried to dissuade him, Midas didn't budge and his wish was granted. Everything he touched did in fact turn to gold. His frenzy and joy soon gave way to despair when he found out that he couldn't even eat as everything he held in his hand turned to gold. His daughter, on seeing his father distraught, came to comfort him and held him in her arms. But she too turned to solid gold before his eyes. It was then that Midas realized the golden touch is no blessing. The moral of the story lies in the realization that excess of anything, however shiny it may be, is bad, and that it definitely comes to the cost of something far more valuable. This Midas touch of development is eating away the divine Himachal, where numerous dams have already been built and the numerous memorandums of understanding are being signed to make way for many others in the pipeline. Seeming good for the economy as well as the environment on the surface, this development is only superficial and is extremely harmful in more ways than one. It is important to note that while being slated as the clean energy, hydroelectric energy is not so clean after all. The brutality of displacement due to the construction of dams is unaccounted for in the assessment for dams. Himachal is a land full of perennial rivers, which makes it an ideal site for the construction of hydroelectric power projects. While the state government boasts of some huge power projects which provide electricity to numerous parts of India, the government has also started a new initiative wherein it provides subsidy for people to start their own mini hydroelectric power projects and hence to generate their own electricity. Though it is true that hydroelectricity is certainly cleaner than thermal power and power generated from other non-renewable sources of energy, it is worth pondering over that how clean this hydroelectricity really is. Is it worth stripping mountains of their biodiversity? Is it worth altering the course of rivers beyond repair? Is it worth constructing huge tunnels inside mountains and massive power plants in the ecologically fragile regions? Is it worth displacing people whose only joy of living and identity is tied to the land they live in? Sadly, there is no light at the end of this hydroelectric tunnel. This Midas touch of development will doom this mountain state. In order to explicate my discourse further, some stories concerning the aforementioned issues have been undertaken for this study. The first story is S.R. Harnoot's The River Has Vanished, which has been taken from the collection Cat Stock. Harnoot is an eminent Hindi writer from Himachal Pradesh. His stories derive life from the majestic mountains, cascading rivers, and simple folk of the Himalayan region. He is deeply concerned with distorted human sympathies towards the natural world that contribute to ecological imbalance. The River Has Vanished captures the intense tension between the need for development and the age-old ways of life in the mountains. In this tale, the village boy, who is the protagonist in this, Tikam, senses the conspiracy of the rich and powerful to tame the river for their benefit, which would deprive the villagers of their livelihoods and lay barren the whole area. He intelligently uses the faith of the people in the village Devta to thwart the construction of a dam on the river. through this story, our note delineates the unbridled construction of hydroelectric projects, dams and tunnels, which have grave consequences in the lives of Pahadi people. Another story that has been taken is A Handful of Dust, which is written by Murari Sharma. Muthi Bhar Dhool is in Hindi. Is another story which expounds about the condition of the dam ousties in district Mandi of Himachal Pradesh. The construction of coal dam made its protagonist Rulia homeless, with his life too having turned into no more than a handful of dust. He rues the loss of his beloved land and the land of his ancestors, so much so that he declines moving out and accepting rehabilitation, even after repeated threats and government notices. In the end of the story, Rulia performs the last rites of his land and attempts to find closure for his pain. He tries to make sense of his loss and to move forward from here. He understands that his whole world has been destroyed, but he has no option but to start his life from square once again. It is said that water has a perfect memory, that since it has nurtured man, animals and plants since time immemorial, the very possibility of life itself arises from water. But in the wake of recent developments, this water has been treated and abused, its course changed, it has become a slave to the whims of the corporations, which are the owners of these projects, and hence the water. It is deplorable how water, which was a site of piousness, has become a site of conflict and detest. The recent debacle that goes by the name of four-laning, hydroelectric project, illegal mining, and deforestation has shown that these deified rivers, vis-a-vis water devtas, have been taking their revenge from the greedy humans. In conclusion, the narratives of rivers in Himachal Pradesh encapsulate a profound transformation from pity to persecution, mirroring broader socio-cultural and environmental shifts. While the historical reverence for rivers endures in the collective memory of the people, the contemporary reality paints a grim picture of exploitation and degradation. By acknowledging and addressing this thematic shift, there lies a hope for reclaiming the sanctity of rivers and fostering a sustainable relationship with nature for future generations. Thank you very much for listening.